Want to be able to tell your story effectively and efficiently? That's what this video is all about. The art of storytelling, how to tell your personal story in 90 seconds. It's Tom Jacobs here. If you're new to this channel, it's all about presentation performance for more profits in your business, especially for the solo practitioner and the solopreneur. Because you want to grow your business through proper sales, through storytelling, through presentation. Well, that's what I'm going to be helping you with. And today, it's all about your personal story and how to tell it effectively and efficiently in 90 seconds. Now, it's pretty difficult to come up with your personal story. I will admit that. And I know I struggled with it, and a lot of my clients struggle with it as well, let alone trying to tell that story in 90 seconds. But this is my theory. If you can pare your story down to the basic elements in 90 seconds and get it really crystal clear, then you can expand it to a much longer story and really engage your audience. So that's the purpose and the exercise that we're going to go through today, is taking your story, bringing it down into 90 seconds, so then you can expand it and it can be very, very impactful for your audience. Because at the end of the day, the purpose of you telling your personal story, whether it's at a sales presentation, you're on stage, or a webinar, is to endear yourself to your audience so they get to know, like, and trust you. So at the end of the presentation, they ultimately take that next step with you, whether that's buying your program, signing up for a discovery call, whatever it is that your offer is, you want them to take advantage of that. And the best way to do that is make sure that they know, like, and trust you. And the power of your personal story is going to help you take that to the next level. I'm going to take you through 3 distinct steps on taking your personal story and transitioning it down into a very impactful 90-second story. And I'm going to use one of my signature stories, one that I've used over and over again, and it was actually a really hard time in my business life. And for many times, I shied away from actually telling the story because it was somewhat embarrassing. But once I started to share the story, I noticed that there was a much better connection between myself and my audience. They got to know me. They realized that I was human as well, and they were more likely to do business with me. The first step is you have to have your story. A lot of people do struggle with this, and I've created some other videos on how to come up with your own personal story. First of all, you need the idea of your personal story. Now, it could be a tragic story, it could be a happy story, it really doesn't matter, but it has to be a transformational story, one where you learn something about yourself and that you can relate it back into your business. Now, there's many different ways that you can relate your personal stories back into your business. A lot of times we are able to do that very effectively when I work with my clients one-on-one. Here are the 3 steps that we'll go through to pare your story down into 90 seconds. Now, I'm going to use my own personal story, one of my signature stories, where I actually had to ask my father for a loan to keep my business afloat at the age of 40. Oh gosh, there's that story right there. And that was under 10 seconds. I thought it was probably like 2 seconds. But seriously, we're going to go through step by step. So first, you have to have your story. The second step is that we're going to get all the facts of the story kind of written down in chronological order. So then you can start to figure out which parts of the story are really relevant and which ones you can save for a longer version of it. Then third, we're going to add color and texture. That's what I like to call more detail into the story. So you really bring your audience into the story with you, because that's where you're going to actually have the most impact with them, when they start to envision what you're envisioning as well as you're telling that story. It's a very powerful technique. Once we have those 3 steps down, now we have a very complete outline of your story. And then all we have to do is just kind of rearrange it a little bit so it fits the hero's journey or the 3-act structure storytelling technique, and then refine it down into 90 seconds. Now, most speakers speak about 100 to 125 words per minute. So that means that you're going to need about 150, 170 words as part of your story. And I do highly recommend writing this out so that you can actually pare it down and count the number of words. And we're going to do that right now. I have my iPad right here. So we're going to just kind of put it all together and show you exactly what I'm doing as well. Here's the outline of my story. So my business was very busy, yet at the end of the month I didn't have any money left over, and I was always struggling to pay bills, knowing where the money was really going, and my savings account kept dwindling down. And then one Sunday afternoon, I was looking at my bank account and realized that on Friday, rent and payroll were due, and I was $10,000 short, and I panicked. I slid into a state of despair as I was looking at my computer screen, and at the age of 40, I started crying. Not quite sure what to do so that I could keep my business open. So this is kind of the starting point of what was going on, and just kind of chronological order going through it. Landlords need to be paid, and employees don't like to work for free, even though a lot of us as business owners do work for free a lot of the time, especially as we're building that business up. I had to make the hardest phone call of my life. At 40 years old, I had to ask Dad for money, a very humbling experience. He agreed to loan me the money at 12% interest and with my house as collateral and an 8-page loan document. A true story, actually quite funny. As we go through and we add color to this, you'll see why. He agreed to loan me the money, like I said. Why the interest, Dad, is what I asked. I want to teach you a lesson, son. And boy, that lesson stuck with me over and over again. I realized that I did need help, that I couldn't do it alone, and that it was okay to ask for help. I paid my rent, paid my employees, and with the remainder of the money I invested in a business coach, someone to guide me and help me. I was able to turn my business around by focusing on sales and programs, which were my core business. I paid my dad back within 6 months and started to really enjoy my business. Okay, that was about 278 words as part of that story. And that's a pretty good rough cut. And I recommend that you can write out your story like this in chronological order and things that were going on in your head so you can start to relate those back to your audience. So the opener needs to have a little bit more oomph to it so that it really draws the audience in. And it needs to be maybe about 50 words, 50 to 60 some words. I want to add some color to it as well to bring that audience in. So how about this as the opener? It was a beautiful Sunday afternoon, yet I was stuck in my tiny, hot office in the back of the fitness center. Really, it was the electrical closet, with the transformers buzzing in the background. I was staring at my computer screen, and tears started streaming down my face. It was my bank account. Payroll and rent were due on Friday, and I was $10,000 short. Okay, so that's the opener. That's the hook, the inciting moment, whatever you want to call that, brings people in. And I lay out the atmosphere of it, the tiny, hot office. Really, it was electrical closet, had the transformers buzzing in the background. Hopefully you were there with me in that office, and you could feel the heat of the office, you could hear the buzzing of the transformers, all of that. That's the start of the do or die. I had to get $10,000 or my business would go out of business. I could add in here, I was 6 months into owning my new business, and it was a beautiful Sunday afternoon. I think I'll keep that out for right now. But if I were to do a longer story, I think I would add that it was, 6 months into the business, I was broke, financially, spiritually, emotionally broke. And I didn't know what to do. I was sitting in my office with the transformers buzzing behind me, and I can go into the story with that. But for the purpose of the 90-second story, I think I'm going to stick with what I have here. That's the do or die moment. Now let's move on to the second act, or the second part of the story. And part of the hero's journey is that you need a guide, somebody to kind of move you along. And that guide is really my father. And so I want to start to introduce him and some of the thought process that was going on in my head when I actually had to ask him for money. So I'm going to pare this down as well, and maybe around 45, 50 words or something like that. I had to make the hardest phone call of my life. At 40 years old, I had to call Dad for money. After some discussion, he agreed to loan me the money at 12% interest and my house for collateral. Talk about teaching me a lesson. Okay, so that's about 45 words. We introduce the guide and the potential solution that Dad's going to loan me the money. Now, the third act is where we need to get some kind of resolution. And when you're telling this story, say like at a networking event or a short video that you're doing online, it's really important that you tie it back into your business and the purpose of you actually telling the story, or else it's just kind of a cute story. So here we go with the closing of it and the hook back into the business. This experience did teach me a valuable lesson, that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to not know everything. That as an entrepreneur, we need support. After paying rent and payroll, I invested the rest in hiring a coach. And it was one of the best investments I've ever made. And in 6 months, I not only paid back my father, but I completely turned around my business and started to really love it again. So the impact here is that, the people that I'm talking to, if I'm doing coaching, of course, is that I want to instill with them that it's okay to ask for help, that we all go through things in our business, and a lot of times having a coach there to help us work through those issues is going to help us in the long term. Now, that last bit was about 65 words. In all total, that's about 175 words in that whole talk. And now let's put the timer on and let's see if we do it in 90 seconds. So here we go. And this is going to be one take. There'll be no cuts in it as well. I'm going to use my notes here. So that's why I'm looking down here at my beautiful iPad. It was a beautiful Sunday afternoon, yet I was stuck in my tiny hot office in the back of the fitness center. Really, it was the electrical closet and the transformers were buzzing behind me. And I was staring at my computer screen and tears started streaming down my face. It was my bank account. Payroll and rent were due on Friday and I was $10,000 short. I had to make the hardest phone call of my life. I had to call Dad at 40 years old and ask him for money. After some discussion, he agreed to loan me the money. The key word there is loan at 12% interest, and I had to put my house up for collateral. Talk about teaching me a lesson. That experience did teach me a very, very valuable lesson, that it's okay to ask for help, that a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we don't have to do it alone. And with that extra money after paying rent and payroll, I actually invested in coaching. And that was one of the best investments I ever made, because within 6 months, not only did I pay my father back in full, but I completely turned around my business and started to really love it again. All right, there you go. That's the story. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the process as well of going through and breaking down your story. I want you to put together your story like this, pare it down, add some color to it, and then start to perform it in those 90 seconds, whether you're at a networking event, if you're doing a webinar, to start that webinar off. Another way of getting closer to your audience is through the power of your own personal story. So start doing that right now. I've created another video right here, and it's called How to Start Your Presentation with a Bang. And it's really about how that first sentence has to draw that audience in. So go ahead and watch that video now and let me know how you like it. And until next time, you have a great day.